The recent failures of AAA gaming are hilarious and great. There's nothing else that I can say, honestly.
Hey, I'm not sure if you get the memo, but AAA gaming is dying. That's right. If you happen to miss the thousands of other videos on this topic, it would appear that AAA games are in big trouble. Fret not.
No, I don't think they're honestly in trouble. Look at Disney, what they're doing. They have destroyed Star Wars as a franchise, at which point it's barely ever going to be profitable, especially after the Acolyte, because that's going to be a legendary level of woke. And, well, the MCU is pretty much ruined. Everything is pretty much ruined. And Disney has lost $3 billion. And do they care? No! No, they just keep calling the fans stupid and whatever. And same with gaming. These games are gonna fail, and they're not gonna care because they have enough money. Losing $1 billion, losing $2 billion, what's the big deal, honestly, right?
If you're a fan, though, enough of these companies are still doing fine, releasing blockbuster titles and making billions of dollars, but it does seem in many ways this portion of the industry has been collapsing under its own weight as of late. Think about how
I would say they're collapsing under their own greed and stupidity, mostly stupidity.
often we've seen these new big AAA games launching and failing by most metrics.
Oh gee, that game. Oof, I don't even remember what it's called, but this one is just special level of horrid.
Failing by most metrics. I mean, recently we had a few high-profile examples. Suicide Squad killed the Justice League, the live
Best game of the year.
service game from Rocksteady, launched in February, peaked
King Shark is a shark that uses a gun.
at 13,000 concurrent players and dropped down to an abysmally low 400 1 month later. The game average review score
Well, that's not really surprising. Did anyone see the trailer for this absolute atrocity of a failure? I did. The trailer already told you that, wow, it's gonna be amazing if there's even 1/100th of a game in this garbage dumpster pile. And there wasn't! So this is not surprising. I mean, most people, most average people, most stupid people are even capable of looking at Suicide Squad's trailer and being like, yeah, this looks horrible on every level imaginable. Holy, this looks bad. Yeah, most people are easily capable of doing that.
400 1 month later. The game average review scores of around 60% from
Now it's, by the way, less than 70 average players. It's great.
critics, and according to its own publisher, sales fell far below expectations, resulting in a poor financial quarter. The net result of them developing this game, it cost Warner Bros. Nearly $200 million in losses. Skull and Bones, the
Good. Oh, and Skull and Bones, this is even better. The pirate game about being a woman pirate. Great.
standalone spin-off of the much-beloved ship combat from Assassin's Creed Black Flag, spent over 11 years in development, reportedly cost Ubisoft over $200 million to make, and immediately post-release found itself in shambles and washed ashore. Review scores averaged around 61, the game accrued less than 1 million total players across all platforms, and apparently it is not expected to recoup its development costs. Not a great showing for the world's first quadruple A game. Both of these examples, I think, highlight some
It's exactly the type of showing you would expect from the world's first quadruple A game.
of the bigger issues for AAA games in general. Massive budgets, long development times, and no room for failure. Many of these games take on average 5 to 7 years to make, with development time for some of these titles exceeding a decade. And this time translates to loads of money. In fact, I would say one of the biggest sources of problems for AAA gaming, period, stems from the fact that these games cost way too much to make. In the late 90s and early 2000s,
No, they don't cost too much to make. I completely disagree with that. I think they cost exactly as much as they should, honestly, at this point. I don't think it's too much of a problem. Sure, you could probably reduce the themes in size and whatnot, but still, it's roughly about what you would expect. The problem is here that they're spending money on literally Sweet Baby Ink to come in and ruin the game and make female characters ugly because that's progressive. Okay? That's a huge part of all of this and why it fails so hard. It is the message. It is real. We know. We have seen leaked emails. We have seen so many things. It is undeniable at this point. It is what it is.
2000s, the high end of development costs for games included titles like Final Fantasy VII and Halo 2, which both cost $40 million, or World of Warcraft, which cost $65 million. But again, these numbers were at the high end of cost in the time frame between, say, 95 and 2005. Most other games that we'd consider AAA of this time period fell well below the mark. The original BioShock was made for just $25 million. Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time cost $12 million. Metal Gear Solid cost $10 million. Call of Duty Finest Hour, $8.5 million. The original Mass Effect was reportedly made for under $3 million, and EverQuest was also made for only $3 million. Can you believe that?
Jesus, that is not a lot. But again, things change nowadays. Well, and things change for the worst, honestly. For example, the new Star Wars game by Ubisoft that's going to be atrocious garbage dumpster fire, as we all know. That thing has cutscenes, and for some reason those cutscenes were made with those interactive body movement capturing suits for some reason. Like, who cares about that? No one. It's still a shitty, it's still a complete trash tier cutscene. And you spend like an extra $1 million or $2 million for a body capture suit? Just stop.
But over the past 2 decades, things have become much more expensive across the board, but this applies to game development as well. On average, it seems that most AAA games nowadays will cost in the ballpark of $50 million, with many of the biggest games swinging well above that number. Breaking the $100 million mark included Battlefield 4, GTA 4, Destiny, and Final Fantasy XIV. Games that cost over $200 million to make were Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Horizon Forbidden West, Last of Us 2, New World,
Horizon Zero Dawn, or whatever this is called. Remember when Aloy was not disgusting, putrid, and ugly? I do. It was a pretty good game back then. But then they decided, wait a minute. Good-looking women? That's not allowed. Let's uglify her to an unbelievable extent. Oh boy.
Scrolls Online. Spider-Man 2 cost over $300 million. Cyberpunk 2077, $400 million. Star Citizen has broke and counting the $600 million mark, and Genshin Impact ran in at $700 million in development cost, although I do believe this figure includes post-launch support. Nevertheless,
I mean, Genshin Impact has made $100 million more back from that, so I think they're okay with that.
They're getting close to $1 billion in development costs for that game, although I think it's probably made over $1 billion at this point. But regardless, between the fact that these games now take on average at least half a decade to make, and they cost so many millions of dollars, the result is little to no room for failure. And when a AAA game does flop, well, we've seen the outcome in...
Well, we also used to live in a time where a man could get married, get a house, get a car, all on an average salary, and his family didn't even have to work. But now people alone mostly starve to death because, expensive. Yeah, everything's fine.
Recent months, with a new round of layoffs announced every other week and seemingly nearly as many.
God, I'm tired of Hi-Fi Rush. It was trash. Get over yourself. No one liked it. It was niche. It didn't do what it was supposed to do. It got canceled. Good.
Any studio closures. Surprise, most companies can't afford to take 5 years making a game that ends up not only not making money, but losing them $200 million. That is the opposite of what they were hoping for. And I think because of that, for the most part, AAA games are just way too expensive for them to take any risks. I mean, this is pretty obvious. Games that don't take risks get pretty boring after the 1000th iteration that you've played. If 95% of the structure, design, and game
I mean, Ubisoft took a risk with Assassin's Creed Shadows by completely rewriting the history of Japan, but that's fine.
Play of, let's say, your brand new MMO plays exactly like every other MMO that I've already played over these past 30 years. Guess what? It's gonna get really boring really fast. And in an industry categorized as entertainment, if I'm bored, I'm out of here. I guess unless I'm addicted, in which case I'll stick around for a little while longer. Damn you, game designers developing with psychological manipulation. Yeah, these These games cost too much money. They can't afford to take any risks, and the result is the bland mush of focus-tested, streamlined, psychologically optimized chum that we are so accustomed to. And don't get me wrong here. Hey, I enjoy eating my dopamine manipulating chum from time to time as well. It can be satisfying to turn your brain off and smash through hordes of monsters. After all, lizard brain
Not enjoyable at all.
go burr. I'm not above it, and I'm not better. I'm no better than anyone else. In fact, looking for groups for uber durial farming, by the way. Hit me up if you're doing it. I think the worst part, though, isn't even how these games are designed and focus tested into that mush, that gameplay loop, but rather because of the vast amounts of money and time it takes to make these, we the consumers end up on the brunt end of recouping those costs. Enter every microtransaction you've ever known. And I know you're sick of hearing the list, but here's the rundown. We of course have the box price for most of these games, but then there are the free-to-play variants, which inevitably will include some variation of subscription. Nowadays, these are pretty much done in the form of battle passes. And then you've got the cash shops with the microtransactions. The cosmetics, that's the easy one. Everyone's happy to hand wave those at this point. Gone are the days of earning your cosmetics through playing the game. You pay for them now. And then the convenience features, right? Where we spend extra money to bypass the inconveniences that were put into the game by the developer.
Are we still excited about Throne and Liberty, by the way? I kind of forgot it exists even. But, I mean, I'm still kind of up for it.
Developers, so we would want to spend that money. And then the most egregious variation is the paying for power, where you spend money to speed up your progression. This is also known as pay to skip. Skip stands for skipping playing the game. That's what it's for. And then to go along with these cash shops, with these sold convenience features and these powers that you're paying for, you will have these games designed aimed to pushing you towards the shop, such as having worse quality of life so that you want to buy the convenience features to bypass it, or having inflated grinds to push you towards purchasing that power and those skips. And now, man, we are AAA gaming. As I said in another recent video of mine, any game that sells convenience and or power of some sort, they are literally making the game worse on purpose so that you are given motivation to buy what they are selling. Just
not even a hot take. We all know this.
so happens, unfortunately enough, one of my favorite genres of games, the MMOs, the live service games, they are especially guilty of this. They're the worst offenders. And I think there's a nice separation that can be made between the AAA games industry for like the single player linear playthrough experience, and then the AAA game industry when it comes to those live services and those MMOs. A lot of what I'm talking about leans more towards that, although there can be an argument for a lot of these AAA games, single player titles as well. It's not really the portion of the AAA industry that I'm talking about. So anyways, yes, AAA games, they take forever to develop. They cost hundreds of millions of dollars. They're too expensive to take risks, which result in a lot of them feeling the same. And on top of that, some, especially those MMOs and live service titles that I love so dearly, it hurts me so much, they're all pretty much made worse in order to sell us microtransactions on the back end. So I think it's no surprise then, in recent years, a lot of the AAA portion of the industry is being put to shame by indie and mid-tier studios. Devs who started out making their game out of a Reddit thread, just like coming up with an idea on a Reddit post and saying, hey, let's make a studio and let's make a game. That's what resulted in Last Epoch. Or developers who admit they don't even really know how to make games and end up churning out Pal World, one of the biggest games of all time on Steam. It is absolutely...
Yeah, this was pretty funny when it happened. I wonder how Pal World's doing right now. Because it held people for a very, very long time, honestly.
Crazy. We've got studios in many cases made up of 50 or less employees just demolishing the sales numbers and player counts of development conglomerates with tens of thousands of people working on titles for them.
Well, yeah, it makes sense because they have a chance to actually make something that's actually good and not by design made from the ground up to be slop that you pay for. So there is that added benefit, honestly.
Past 12 months, just looking at my own gaming habits, I can happily say some of my favorite games have been Enshrouded, Last Epoch, Manor Lords, No Rest for the Wicked, V Rising, Baldur's Gate 3, and Witchfire. Not to say that I haven't enjoyed any AAA games. Top of my head would be Dragon's Dogma 2. I had a great time with. I played a lot of WoW Classics, specifically
Dragon's Dogma 2, boys. What a time to be alive.
Season of Discovery. And Diablo 4,
Season of Discovery Phase 4 Waiting Room hype. Yay! I'm playing the Auction House currently. Don't know about you.
revisited recently and had a solid 2 weeks of it.
I hope Phase 5 is better than Phase 4. Phase 2 was good for some reason. Again, the 10-player raids are just they kind of feel just so much better, honestly, than anything else, if we're being completely real. Because Phase 3 is just annoying. It's just really, really annoying. All the world buffs that you need to collect, all the consumables you need to collect, all the everything that you need to collect. And the best part is, we're at the stage, well, we have been at this stage for a long time in Phase 3, where when you started Phase 3 and you did a day one clear, man, everyone was sweaty AF, right? And then for the next like two or 3 weeks, everyone kept on being sweaty. No wipes, no anything, right? And now at this point, you're playing with the same people who cleared day one, and you're wiping on the third boss because everyone is too lazy to literally even care about the mechanics. And on the Dream Eater or whatever his stupid face name is, you don't even remember how to do the flame mechanic properly because no one cares enough. And if you lose your world buffs in Season of Discovery, you might as well just not even use consumables at all, because your DPS is just 30% less and your parse is ruined for life. And now you just need to look at look at my parse when it was actually good. 90 plus percentile. Good. And the average is now like 60 because no one gives a shit. And then you get to like the second to last boss and you look at the parse there when you all died at the third boss and you're like, wait a minute, how am I parsing in the 90s now without buffs? Are you telling me every raid pretty much just wipes at some point out of sheer boredom? That's crazy.
Entertainment, although I'm probably done at this point. But yes, a majority of my playtime with games over this past year has been with games made by indie devs or those mid-tier AA studios. And I think a large part of the reason for this is because these games are made by smaller, more cohesive teams. When you've got development studios like, say, Ubisoft, for example, who in a lot of cases will have many thousands of people working on like single Assassin's Creed games, a lot gets lost in the sauce there. Too many cooks in the kitchen, as they say, and you don't have that kind of.
And it somehow magically is worse than the last Ubisoft Assassin's Creed game. It's just beautiful.
Streamlined focus and vision that you tend to get with these games made by smaller studios. Also, because with these indie studios and these mid-tier studios, you don't have budgets that are as blown out, which makes them a lot more likely to be willing to take risks and try new things. In fact, I would even argue that indie and mid-tier studios, they have to take risks, because in order to stand out as a small studio amongst the sea of many thousands and thousands of indie devs, you have to make something that feels novel and unique. And to do that, you have to try new things. You have to take risks, what a lot of AAA studios just aren't willing to do. Get that argument that, hey, a lot of Assassin's Creed games all feel the same. A lot of the Far Cry titles feel very similar. Ubisoft isn't the only one guilty of this, but Call of Duty, I guess that's another great example. You get these big AAA studios that seem to churn out, again, those risk-averse products, whereas the indie studios have to take risks in order for anyone to even pay attention to them. And as a result, we get more novel and interesting concepts in some circumstances. And I think the cherry on top is the
I don't think we even get that many novel and interesting concepts. I just think we get actually good execution.
fact that for the most part, indie games aren't full of all of that cost recouping BS.
God, look at this game. How did anyone playtest this and say, oh yeah, I'm not colorblind now?
Those microtransactions, those cash shops full of convenience and power for sale, you know what I mean? They are just games that are sold to you many times at a base cost, and that is it. You just play it for fun. That's the end of the transaction. And again, this is mostly applicable to the MMO and specifically the live service portion of the AAA industry, but even some of it bleeds into the single player games. You're seeing single player games with cash shops and season passes as well. It hasn't escaped that portion either. And I do want to make it clear here, this isn't a I hate AAA games video, because
It should be.
don't. And they have their place in the industry. I play a lot of them, and for the most part, this is what appeals to the wider market. Although I will say it has been great to see games from smaller studios reach the masses with titles like Baldur's Gate 3 from Larian, with Palworld, and even the Helldivers franchise. Really, really cool to see these smaller studios, these indie devs, strike out and get such mass appeal and get just such high player numbers and sales.
Well, these success stories like Larian especially just prove that, well, everything that we already honestly knew, right? Make a good game. People will play it. Not really that complicated. Treat your player base like autistic children. Get Suicide Squad. Not really hard math here, honestly. Arguably not even math at all, honestly. But yeah, well, anyway, that was our boy Force. Very good. Force Gaming, 10 out of 10. This was Quizer 7. Bye.